Hello, I am here today with Dr. Shini Somara, who is an incredible woman in STEM, and I'm so honored to be able to talk with her today.
Hi, Ainsley. It's great to be here. I'm Dr. Shini Somara. Originally, I'm a mechanical engineer and computational fluid dynamicist. And more recently, I am a producer of media content, whether that's in the form of television, digital media, books, and even a podcast.
So, going ahead and diving into the questions. First question is, I'm sure you've heard of or even spoken about the confidence gap. Why do you think the confidence gap exists for women in STEM?
Great question. I mean, I think part of it is probably biology. We're wired differently to men. I think if you have physical prowess, that can often make you feel more confident. Confidence is very much rooted in a sense of safety. If you don't feel safe, or if you feel insecure for whatever reason, that can give you a sense of low confidence. What I have found as a woman of color in engineering is that my lack of confidence came from not feeling safe. I didn't feel safe amongst people that didn't look like me or sound like me or think like me because I really was a minority in engineering. I felt like if I said anything, people wouldn't understand because no one was like me. I felt like my peers would not back me up or would not be in my corner. And I think also a lack of confidence in women can come from a lack of experience. You know, if I've done something many times and I'm familiar with something, I feel more confident doing it. And as a
Mhm.
graduate engineer at the age of 24, I lacked the experience and familiarity with being an engineer. And as a result, my confidence was lower compared to
Mhm.
years later.
There's kind of this endless cycle. The lack of experience is what sparks those feelings of low confidence in the first place. But then you are lacking experience because those fields that you're trying to get experience in are male dominated. How do you break that cycle?
And I think that men that I was working with didn't have a familiarity themselves with
Mhm.
someone that looked like me. So it wasn't that they were not welcoming. I think they just didn't know how to deal with someone like me. And so it was kind of insecurity on their part. But I think when there is a lack of familiarity, my experience has been you can either get unfriendly
Mhm.
and you can kind of push it away, or you can push yourself away from a situation. So you either reject the unfamiliar or you walk away from the unfamiliar. And I think with my experience in engineering, there was a certain sense of not feeling welcome, like a slight an imposter syndrome going
Mhm.
on. So I just wanted to clarify that because I think I don't want to ever convey the message that I wasn't welcomed. It wasn't like an outright
Mhm.
rejection. It's more like a, oh, we don't know how to deal with you kind of.
It sounds like what we need is sort of a vulnerability. We need to be open to welcoming new ideas and welcoming new perspectives. And so right now we are in a culture where it's very easy to just put up our walls and, as you said, either reject or walk away from things that aren't familiar. But what we really need to start making real change is to be open to taking those risks and putting yourself out of your comfort zone.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it is really important to cultivate an environment where people can get vulnerable. I think COVID and what came with the pandemic in terms of isolating
Mm.
and being in your own environment really changed the landscape of the way people work because there was a real acceptance of working from home and working in places that felt safe. And I think after the pandemic, people have wanted to continue that sense of comfort and safety. And it's really influenced a sense of being vulnerable. I mean, as an example, now I think women are more empowered than ever because of what they went through with the pandemic. I think they're more empowered than ever to say, you know what, I actually really need flexible working hours to look
Mhm.
after my kids. You know, they feel empowered to do their best work whilst also juggling a family. And that comes from allowing yourself to get honest and transparent about what you need in order to do your job well. And ultimately, that boils down to allowing someone to be vulnerable, being open to what people need and listening to feedback and listening to suggestions is what we need to carry through, even though we are now not in the pandemic. I think employers do need to listen to what people need.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Something that I've definitely seen is there is often this backlash against people who do speak out and who do say, hey, I need something different than what I have right now. How do you think that we should change the mindset so that we are able to have women be in a more inclusive space where they don't feel like they're going to face this backlash?
I don't know if there is more backlash or less. It feels like there's more backlash because we have so many social media platforms where people can say what they want and nothing is policed. I don't know if there's more backlash or just more people providing their opinions freely. I also feel that things have never been so good in terms of being able to voice your opinions, because the flip side of the social media conundrum is that now anyone can say what they want. And I think that's really great because then we get exposure to people that have all kinds of perspectives and opinions. And I don't think anyone who puts their voice out there on social media is not immune to backlash. I'm very positive about the variety of voices. I personally follow people that are so articulate because I may not be like them, but what I'm really drawn to is the courage and the bravery to actually put your opinion out there. That takes guts. Yeah, it's so exciting that people are putting themselves on the line to make themselves heard.
Absolutely. Trailblazing is definitely a daunting task, but we need those people who have the courage to step forward and say what's on their minds, because chances are that thing is on the minds of plenty of other people as well who just don't feel the courage to say it.
Exactly. And it gives them the voice, it gives them the permission to make themselves heard. I mean, even with my podcast, having women in STEM come on and tell me about their experiences, often listening to them gives me permission to actually talk about those experiences. Because for a long time, I was trained not to talk about certain things.
And that's the goal of these interviews, to try and get those experiences heard, because we can't know what we need to change if we don't talk about what needs to be changed.
I think sometimes women don't even realize that they have gone through something that is not acceptable because it hasn't been talked about. So if you have an experience that doesn't feel right and you don't hear anyone talking about it, you think maybe I should keep quiet about it because it would cause too much of a stir. I mean, I can give you an example. I did computational fluid dynamics modeling. Once I was in a work situation where someone said, so what kind of modeling are you doing today? Fashion or engineering? And it made me feel really uncomfortable because, I wanted to be seen as someone who was professional and doing computational fluid dynamic modeling and nothing else. I just let it go because I just thought, you know what, no one's going to get it. I just didn't think anyone would have had the same experiences because, earlier, like a few years before, I had done a bit of modeling and like fashion modeling. And so I just thought, just let it go, just leave it, don't say anything. But today, I know from doing my podcast that women have experienced those kinds of small comments here and there, which has weighed them down. And when you start talking about them, you just think, oh, okay, other people have experienced the effects of comments like that and how it can chip away at your confidence. And rather than let it eat you up, you can say, okay, this is something that happens frequently. And therefore, I'm not going to take it to heart. I'm not going to keep it a secret, but I'm definitely not going to let it eat me up.
You're right. Sometimes it's just these little things that you just think, oh, that's nothing. I'll just blow it off. There is definitely advocacy towards moving towards making big changes, but we also need to make those small changes in the mindset and the way that we interact with each other. Those can definitely be harder.
Yeah, I think when you have conversations with others, it can really just contextualize your own journey.
I think also, in our head, we have such an awful inner critic sometimes who can really blow things out of proportion. I have found, especially, when I just get to talk something out with somebody, then it really helps me reason through it. Even if they don't say anything, if I just start talking and sort of processing it verbally, then I can sort of get it out of my head and get it into words. That actually is a perfect segue into this question anyway. So I'll go ahead and dive into that real quick while we're on this topic, which is what strategies for overcoming imposter syndrome and self-deprecating mindsets have you found to be most effective for you?
I think the answer to that question is a lifetime's work. As in, I will be continuing to find the answer to that question over my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Because so far, I've done a lot of work in this area on self-acceptance, because that inner critic often comes or is a louder inner critic to those who are quite perfectionistic. And I'm quite perfectionistic. So I have a very loud inner critic. And the antidote to my inner critic is really self-acceptance. When you're a perfectionist, you want everything a certain way and to certain standards. And I've really had to do a lot of work around accepting that things aren't always perfect. They aren't always the way I want them to be. And that's okay. It's not easy. It's not an easy thing to develop. And it's really taken me a long, long time. And it's a work in progress for me. I've had massive expectations of what I wanted to achieve by certain like milestones in my life, et cetera, et cetera. And self-acceptance has allowed me to say, okay, things are massively not turning out the way I want them to, the way I imagined they would turn out, but that's great. Also, another thing, a major tool that I use is gratitude, because it's always easy to look at where I lack and what I have still left to do and how I can be better and or have more, and that kind of endless pursuit that actually leaves you always not very happy. By practicing gratitude, I find that actually it makes me really live in the moment and find joy in what I have rather than what I don't have. Right. And gosh, when you're ambitious, every single moment is taken with like striving and like, pursuing something. And in those moments of gratitude, you actually just stop, you breathe, you look around and you're like, wow, I'm so lucky. I'm so happy.
I am really, really glad that you brought that up because I particularly am a big proponent of gratitude, especially if you are working in a team or working with other people. If you take a second to acknowledge how well they're doing or something that you really admire or are grateful for about them, then I think that can also be a good way to sort of help quell that inner critic.
I would agree. But I also would say, be careful of living out somebody else's expectations.
That's true.
Because, another thing that has really been challenging and a little bit of a hindrance is living for other people's expectations and changing myself based on what I think other people might be thinking. This is part of self-acceptance, is to not have other people's opinions be more important than my own. So that doesn't mean not listening to others. By all means, listen to others, but also check in with yourself. Does that feel right? Is it in alignment with your own values? And if so, then great. But whatever you do, don't live for other people's approval. Live for your own. I think it's really important that we are proud of who we are.
I really like that. I have definitely felt times where I was like, oh, I wish I was more like this person. It's definitely hard saying, I'm not that person, but I am me and I have my own strengths and I should embrace those instead.
Yeah, I think being inspired by others is great. But I think if you do something that you're really proud of and someone says it's rubbish, and then you're not proud of what you've done anymore because of someone else's opinion, then I think you're in dangerous territory. Or if you're doing something for someone else, I don't know, because your grandmother wants you to become something, just be careful not to let other people override what you feel in your own heart, you know.
Right. Completely agree. As an incoming college student, that's definitely something that I've been grappling with, that sense of, oh, this is what I should be versus this is who I want to be. And, I guess as you're saying, it just takes a lifetime of learning to figure out how to balance that. And, it does really start with just knowing who you are, I think. Because once you know who you are, then you can learn, okay, now how can I go about embracing who I am? So that's, again, a very step-by-step journey. You can't just do it in a day.
Yeah, that question, who am I, is a massive question. I remember when I was a lot younger, coming out of university, and I was asking myself, who am I? You know, and I think I wanted the answer right then and there. But
Mm-hmm.
now so much time has passed, and I realized that the answer to that question is constantly changing. But I think it's always important to follow what feels right and make sure
Mm-hmm.
you're always kind to other people, because there's no point in doing anything just for one's self. Doing things for other people for the benefit of others is so much more rewarding. We all have
Absolutely.
skills and we all have talents, and applying those skills and talents to uplift society is really, I think, where the most enriching work is.
Absolutely. I 1000% agree. There's something so um, not just satisfying, but something so powerful when you realize that what you have done has empowered somebody else, has changed their story, and has helped them see a new path that they could take.
Yeah, it's absolutely what I live for. The idea of leaving the world a better place as a result of my efforts is what keeps me motivated. And it's really the motivation for writing my latest book. Well, all my books actually, but my latest book really gives people a chance to see that about engineers, because I really have experienced that engineering is a subject that can give you amazing skills, and often those amazing skills are used in finance. But actually, the engineers that stayed with engineering really wanted to make a difference through their work and help people. And that's what I love most about engineers. I mean, when you think of a bridge and the millions of people that travel over bridges, and the engineering that goes into making sure those bridges are safe, and so engineers really are unsung heroes, because it's very
Mm-hmm.
obvious what doctors and nurses do, and healthcare professionals, but it's less obvious how much engineers do save society. I mean, sanitation, for example, where would we be without our sewage system and clean water? So many of the engineers that I know are very shy and don't need that kind of accolade.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes them even more endearing, that they're doing this out of the pure love of building and testing and prototyping and designing. So yeah, they're a very specific breed of people.
Absolutely. And that's who we need to be in these fields, those people who actually genuinely care about it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Kind of shifting gears a little bit, as our second to last question, in your opinion, what changes, if any, are needed in the STEM fields to be more attractive and conducive to women?
More women in engineering will attract more women into engineering. So that's one. So, and it sounds really obvious, but the women in engineering need to be more vocal about the fact that they exist. Telling people about your work in a very genuine and authentic way can be just as inspiring as someone who loves being on a stage. Like, I love being on a stage and I love talking to large groups of people, but you don't need to be that kind of engineer in order to inspire others. You just need to tell people about what you do, and you just need to provide that opportunity for people to see you exist. But I also think the way STEM is portrayed needs to change. I've often heard that physics, for example, is for people who are quite elite and maybe come from a wealthy background and things like that. And that's why I really support engineering apprenticeships and T levels, technician levels, because it can be a great way into engineering without all the high level maths, high level physics, high level science qualifications. Engineering is a lot more grounded and down to earth. Like, if you really want to get into an engineering profession, you can be very hands-on and practical by doing an apprenticeship. They call it earning while you're learning, and you can get university degrees that way. There are many ways into engineering, and The reason why I support that is because it's one way of showing people what STEM careers are about. For a long, long time, maybe even still today, if you say the word engineer or engineering, people think greasy overalls, hard hats, rolling under someone's car, fixing an engine,
Mm-hmm.
And engineering is that, but it's also a lot of other things. And it's the lot of other things that I don't think people really get to see. So through my work, I'm trying to make videos that show people what engineering genuinely is by following engineers. And I think that's one way of encouraging more people, more minorities, hopefully more women into STEM, because they'll actually see others doing it and see them and imagine themselves doing it and thinking, maybe I could do that.
Absolutely. And that actually connects to what we were talking about earlier about unfamiliarity, how we
Yeah.
tend to, shy away from it or reject it. So, seeing that, oh, this field isn't as unfamiliar as I expected, and breaking that illusion that a STEM career is only one certain thing. It's not, there's so much more to it.
Well done on seeing that connection of the unfamiliar. Never thought about it like that. It's very astute of you to see that.
Thank you.
STEM is so much. I mean, to be fair, engineering is like a massive umbrella term. I think that's been part of the problem. Like it's
Mhm.
so broad, but actually it's really exciting and there's a wealth of engineering out there, and there's surely got to be something that fits a wide variety of people.
With online learning right now, you can go get a degree in something online via Coursera. As you're saying, those different pathways into a career. Because I feel like a lot of times, there's this stereotype of you need to get a degree in this, then you go get an internship in this, then you get a job in that way. Like it's a very
Yeah.
straight path. You can't deviate from that at all. But the fact that there are so many more opportunities is exciting because there are many different ways to get to the same target.
Yeah, and it's breaking down the stigmas that exist.
Mhm.
I mean, the amount of people that think apprenticeships are for non-academic dropouts at school,
Mhm.
and it's just not the case. Having written the book, I now see that actually apprentices were really smart to take that route in because they didn't have college debt. They usually have about 5 years work experience as well as accumulating a degree. It's a really smart way to get to build your career. Get rid of the stigmas. Like no one's better than anyone else, I think
Exactly.
what's so important is merit and passion. Having passion for what you do, like how hard do you work? How much do you want this? These are all important things.
I think, just because in the society we live in nowadays, reputation is such a big deal. There's so many things that we need to change, starting with exposing people to the real side of things, whether it's the real side of what it means to be a woman in STEM or the real side of what exactly it means to be an engineer. Just showing people this is what life is really like. And, that's the beauty of social media and all the media that we have now. You can do that. You have a platform to share your voice where otherwise people could have just been left in the dark because they wouldn't have been able to be connected with the information that they now have.
There are individuals that have done like the most unique, trailblazing, pioneering things and didn't go to the best universities because they've got something else that's special about them that can't be on a league table. Something magical that is just unique to them. My parents had to work really, really hard to give us a kind of decent childhood. We didn't have a network or a community to fall back on. But as a result of all of those underprivileges, I think I've got parts of my character that I just would never have developed that are really positive, like resilience and humility, determination, and the ability to work really hard. I have a tiny media production company, and I can tell you what is more important than anything else for my business is willingness and creativity, lateral thinking, and, like determination and enthusiasm for the job. And, I couldn't care less if the person's gone to a league table university or scored the best points or whatever. Like I'm interested in how they come across to me. And that's why passion and willingness is so important, because if you've got the passion to apply for a job in company A, your passion will drive you to do as much research as you can to really get to know what it is you need in order to land yourself the job there. And you know, passion gives you that drive to really get what it is you want. And then willingness is what helps you overcome all the rejections, because what we want doesn't fall in our laps. You know, we usually have to chase after it and keep going despite all the no's. Yes. So if you're going for a job where, you know, you're being interviewed and you really want the job and then they say no, maybe it wasn't meant for you because you're meant to be somewhere else. And so having that resilience and strength of character to say, maybe my path is not here.
That can be so scary sometimes. You know, I'm a very organized person, so I like having everything mapped out. So like not knowing what's going to happen in 1 year, 2 year, 4 years can definitely be daunting. But I think that, you know, again, you just need to be open to adjusting your path and taking your direction if things don't come out the way that you planned it. Because, you know, planning is basically just saying, this is where I should be in a certain point in time, but maybe that's not where you need to be. You know, I like what you said about resilience, because I think that again ties into what we were saying before about accepting yourself as maybe, you know, you didn't fit in here, but you will fit in somewhere. You will find it.
I can tell you from all the disappointments, all the things that went wrong were my greatest teachers, because the amount of sadness and disappointment and I didn't get that job really made me dig deep for a plan B. It's all led me to where I'm meant to be. So it's like, have a plan, because that is a really great thing to do. But I think there's a limit. And when things don't work out, I think it's the strongest strength of character if you can say, that didn't work out. What is it that I'm meant to be learning here? And then if you can learn from failure and mistakes, you're winning. You're absolutely winning.
At school, there's this acronym for FAIL, is first attempt in learning. And I really like that because it sort of encapsulates exactly what you're saying.
I love that. Never heard that before.
So this series is called She Is because it's meant to be an exploration of women's identities in STEM. So my last question for you is, what is one adjective that you would use to describe yourself in terms of your identity and your journey in STEM?
Empowered.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. I have absolutely loved chatting with you, and I've been really inspired by the things you've shared. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You're an inspiration, and I really appreciate you making this space and time to have a conversation like this.